We're live.
Okay. Okay, the time is now 3:01 p.m. Today's date is September 24th, 2020. This is the Safety Committee meeting of Youngstown City Council, and we are going virtual because of COVID. And I will now do the chairperson's roll call. Present today are Vice Chair Jimmy Hughes, Committee Member Basha Adamzak, Assistant Clerk Jennifer Ossinger, City Assistant Law Director, Assistant Prosecutor Dana Lance, IT Specialist Rick Deeks, Chief Robin Lees, and our Clerk of Council, Valencia Morrow. I believe I have everyone. And I'm Anita Davis, Chairperson of the Safety Committee meeting in Sixth Ward City Council. So that being out the way, the second item on the agenda is under new business, and this is ordinance 20-235, and it's appropriating $1,667,825.44 for cops hiring. It is a part of a grant, and what was that? Okay, so the discussion on this, any questions on this grant? We've all had a chance to look it over. You know, I have, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. I have some questions for Attorney Lance, Dana Lance. Dana, could you go over what would happen? What is the layoff practice? How is it affected by this grant? This grant requires, from my understanding, that if we hire police, if we accept this grant, if we appropriate this grant, and we have to hire police officers, I believe it's up to 8 police officers, and that we would have to retain these 8 officers during the lifetime of the grant. And there's a concern that I had regarding our city's financial situation. If we had to do layoffs, would our grant supersede the layoff seniority rights that's set down within the city contract with the YPRO and YPA?
Anita, if Councilwoman Davis,
Yes,
Attorney Limbian is on the line now, but I think I can answer the question as it relates to the collective bargaining. A grant cannot supersede the collective bargaining agreement. That collective bargaining agreement will bind us. So our layoffs are basically the last ones hired are the first ones laid off. As to the terms of this grant specifically, I have not seen anything to comment whether we have to keep those 8 officers or whether we have to keep a staffing level. I can't speak to the specific terms. I was not provided with that documentation, but as far as the collective bargaining agreement, it would not supersede any grant conditions. Or pardon me, the grant conditions would not supersede the collective bargaining agreement.
Attorney Limbian, you've been a part of previous discussion on this. So then what I'm understanding is then we have to, based upon this grant, maintain the level of the officers or those specific officers? Attorney Limbian?
Well, I didn't read the grant in total. It hasn't been with us that long. I mean, the paperwork hasn't been with us that long. My appreciation that it's the number rather than the specific names, if that's what you're asking.
If I may, through the chair.
Who's this, Chief Lees?
Correct.
Okay, but before you go, Chief, so Counselor, you're saying it's the numbers that we would have to maintain, not the officers per se, but just that number. So the numbers could not be lower? Okay, Chief Lees?
Okay, if I might clear this up, we've just, we are in the late stages of finishing up the last COPS grant. And from my experience with that grant, despite the baseline that we set, we do not have to hire 8 officers in addition to that baseline. However, our baseline was set at our basically our lowest staffing level, which is 143. So to get us back to what we were actually budgeted for this year, we would have to, right now, we would have to hire 8 officers. Now, having said that, the other thing is that in the last grant, our baseline was around 154, I think. We never maintained a staffing level at 154 plus the 8 that we agreed to hire under the grant. Therefore, as this grant plays out, as long as you do not lay off the 8 people you hire under the grant, we should not default on it. In other words, if in fact we hire 8 and our staffing level is at 148, which would be again not 8 in addition to our base that we put in the grant, we will not be held accountable for that. As long as we maintain 8 positions that were hired as a result of the grant, we won't have a problem.
So
that's
bring it up to,
a practical standpoint, what we've experienced with the last grant.
well, so the practicality would take us up to 154 then?
Well, if we added the 8 to the 143 we have for a base, it would be 151. The fact is, if we do not go to 151, we will not default on the grant, just as long as we have the 8 officers hired under the grant. In other words, we're having attrition occur as we speak. I've got one officer's last day is tomorrow. Another one will be going within a month or so, which will take us down to about 141. And I expect that we may go below that before we start hiring, which right now we're predicting will be in early spring. But as long as those officers that we hire originally under the grant, the 8, regardless of what that brings us up to, as long as we do not lay them off, we will not default on the grant.
So laying off those particular officers, not the
Through
number.
the chair,
Yeah.
Yes, Jeff.
Anita, through the chair,
Jeff,
if I might ask a question.
go ahead.
Chief, just so that I'm clear, if there's a conflict between the contracts and the grants, what happens then? Like, what if we get into a financial situation where we have to lay off, and those are the last hired, and we can't lay them off because of the grants, what happens then?
Well, no,
Thank
then
you.
we if it came to that point, we would default on the grant if we laid those officers off, which we would have to contractually. But I guess maybe one way to explain this better is that we're going to continue to have attrition. We could hire 8 people, and what I would say is that in the course of the 3 years of the grant, we're going to probably hire significantly more. So just as an illustration, if we hired a dozen people, those first 8 are the ones we have to worry about. The ones hired after that could be laid off without a problem, if you follow me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question? Because Attorney Limbian, I remember we had something similar to this dealing with the acceptance of the grant for the firefighters, and turned out that we got stuck. And appreciate having the firefighters. I appreciate their work and everything, but financially, the city sustained a burden. And right now, I just don't see a reason why we would appropriate this at this moment. Because Chief, you're saying you're not going to be doing anything until 2021? Chief?
Through the chair, that would be correct. I was just going to add that is that we won't be looking to access money from this grant for months at this point. So the appropriation, I imagine, could be tabled at this point until we get closer to that. And then, you could confer with finance But like I said, I don't see where there's going to be an issue, because we should be through the attrition that we will experience. We should be hiring well beyond 8. And as I said, as long as those original 8 are not laid off, we will not default on the grant.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, Councilman Julius Oliver has joined the meeting. And of course, that was City Law Director Jeff Limbian, who's a part of the meeting today too. Okay, well, moving on, Jimmy?
I just have a question for Attorney Limbrick, Jeff. This is supposed to be a COPS grant, and that's the community police COPS. Are you satisfied that the chief's use of this money and these officers are going to satisfy the terms of the grant itself? Because this is supposed to be community police money. I don't believe, in my opinion, that it's supposed to be general police, but that's how we are going to use it, and that's how it's being explained. We appear to have always had.
Go ahead, sir.
No, if you got the answer already, you can go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Through the chair, I take the chief at his word. If he says that they're going to, the money is going to be for community police, I believe it'll be used for community police. And in fact, I'm sure the administration will make sure that we adhere to the letter of the COPS grant requirements. So yes, if it's community police money, I have every belief that that's exactly the way it will be used. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 2. If there's no other questions or discussions on this piece of legislation, item number 3 is unfinished business. And the first thing is, and I have it in the wrong order, but we were previously speaking about the take-home cars. Real quick, Attorney Limbian or Dana, do you want to say anything about the take-home cars situation? Either of you? Jeff or Dana?
Through the chair, yes, Councilwoman Davis, I am familiar with the situation and the current status. I know the mayor has been working on a comprehensive plan for the whole city with regard to take-home vehicles, and I know we will be wrapping up legislation for your consideration, I believe by next week, for whatever meeting that then would fall into, where it's the mayor's plan to severely limit the number of take-home cars. I should say, I could even say dramatically. I believe that it will encompass cars, either cars that are contractually required to be taken home, or those cars that are will remain in the city for city as city residences. If with some exceptions, if you live outside the city, the cars will not be taken home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana, this is we're talking about citywide, this new piece of legislation, correct, Dana and Jeff?
Yes, that is my understanding, Councilman Davis. Last November, we had started gathering information regarding the take-home cars as part of the mayor's desire to look at that, and further to, in looking at our insurance and our coverage, to look at some risk reduction issues. When Nikki Posterly came on as chief of staff, we worked with her in putting together a questionnaire for all departments that basically identified the types of cars that each person has assigned to them, the miles on those cars, the use and purpose of those cars. And then she had asked for a justification or a reasoning as to why somebody would need a take-home car. She's in the process of gathering all of that after having received those, processing all of that information so that we can include it in a report for the mayor. That went out right before COVID. So while we did receive quite a few of those in April, there are still some departments we haven't received. And without that input, I think it makes it difficult for us to get that legislation done. So I think that's what another week or so in gathering that information is required for, basically to justify those exceptions that Attorney Limbian had identified. You know, so there's a significant amount of input from the department heads that's being considered.
I got a question.
I think Anita is mute.
Muted, Councilwoman Davis.
Neat.
Through the chair?
Julius,
Yes, I got a
go ahead.
question.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Go
Through
ahead.
the chair. What type of exceptions are we talking about as far as exceptions that would allow an officer to still be allowed to take a city vehicle outside the city? Are we speaking of those type of exceptions or something else?
If I can speak to that, I think
Attorney Lance,
they're in looking at all departments, they're looking at those positions that would require somebody to have that kind of use for, there's a myriad of different reasons that have been proposed, whether it be people that are on call and what have you. I don't know that all of those final decisions have been made, and that's something the administration is looking at. So to answer your question, Julius, it could be an exception for an officer who works outside of the city or who lives outside of the city because of the nature of his job. And those reasons are all being considered as they were presented to the mayor.
Okay, follow up through the chair.
go ahead, Julius.
Yeah, so just my 2 cents through conversation with citizens. Okay, I would guess part of the reasoning or part of the result of taking cars home as an officer would be to bring stability to neighborhoods, which was a big plus when officers were required to live within the city and, you know, love the community in, which would make them work harder for the community that they're in. So with the cars, Youngstown City Police cars bringing stability to outside neighborhoods, outside the city, to Austintown, Boardman, Poland, Canfield, Liberty, wherever these officers may live, we're basically spending taxpayer money from Youngstown to bring stability to suburban neighborhoods. Those people feel safer when we know we need that in Youngstown. So I would venture to say there should be no exception for a vehicle leaving the city of Youngstown. That's just my 2 cents, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Dana, would you, as you guys prepare the legislation and with further discussion on this item, take into consideration that I'm in concurrence with Councilman Oliver, which is the citizens of Youngstown need to see the benefit of take-home cars. And so, you know, as you bring this legislation, keep that part in mind.
Absolutely. And I will make sure to note that in the report that we are preparing.
Thank you. Okay. Julius or Jimmy, Basha, any more questions on the take-home cars? We'll be looking at that legislation when it comes to us. Basha?
Just a comment. I want to agree with both you and Julius. I do feel if the cars are take home, I would prefer to see them in the city. But can somebody just briefly give me an example of why any on-call employer, or I guess in this case is a safety committee meeting, why an officer would take home a car based on what?
I think that's going to Chief Lee's. Chief?
Yes, the take-home cars primarily are for the expedient response for the officers, or in most cases, it's going to be detectives. The homicide detectives are one of the exceptions. Crime scene the Family Services Unit, which responds to, again, if there's a rape or other crime related to women or family, are a couple of the examples.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. That's what happens when you sleep underneath the air conditioning. So are there any other questions on this item, on this topic about the take-home cars? If not, we'll move on and we'll continue to look forward to the next piece of legislation that addresses the take-home cars. The next item then would be to Chief Lees, again, dealing with traffic enforcement and speeding. Chief, I asked this going to the agenda. I know I'm not alone in receiving phone calls, speeding complaints and seeing speeding complaints coming to my email account. What steps are being taken to curtail the speeding that's taking place in the city that seems to be just rampant? Chief Lees, do you have any plans to address the speeding situation?
Through the chair, we do have grant money to focus on those types of complaints through our IDEP and some of the other traffic enforcement programs. So when we send the officers out on those programs, we basically try to identify the trouble spots. I spoke to Major Allen from the Sheriff's Department as recently as today about a complaint that was sent to us as well as them in an area in the south, basically the southwest section of the city that involves our jurisdiction, Boardman, and that area. So he also has enforcement money through a grant and has offered to assist with assigning some of the deputies into those areas at our request to again help with that. In addition to that, where we do have the complaints, we encourage the beat officers to take out the laser units and when they have time, try and do some enforcement. We do have the speed signs that capture the speed, and we deploy those basically. We have a list, and we put those out there accordingly to try and slow folks down.
Chief, is there a log, some way of tracking the various places that speed sign is deployed? I mean, to make sure that it's getting spread across, deployed all over town and not just in certain sections of town. Chief?
Well, I could go back and look at the, because like I said, we work off a list as a lot of times, particularly most times the speed signs are deployed in response to councilmatic complaints. Occasionally we identify an area that in particular that, we feel that we need to try and slow folks down in because of reported accidents or other activity. Most recently, I had the sign set up in an area where there was some newly paved roadway because it just anticipated that things were going to pick up there to try and keep a lid on it. So there's no, again, favoritism shown to one area or the other. It's basically as you guys call in, we identify the area and we work the signs accordingly.
Chief, is there a number that the public, okay, boss, I'll get to you. But Chief, is there a phone number for the public to call to report the complaints about speeding? Is there a telephone number for the traffic division or someone who's focuses on that? Do you have a phone number?
Through the chair, yeah, they could call the traffic office. I think actually the better thing to do would be to direct an email in, so we have that document.
I'm sorry, what was that now?
I would say, yeah, they could call the traffic office, but I think these days the better thing to do might be to send an email to the department, and that way we'll have a record, and we'll put it up there with the others. And again, the thing that will drive this is if if we know that there's been some traffic accidents in the area as well.
Okay, Chief, what's the email address and the telephone number that the public should call and write to?
I think if you just type in Youngstown or City of Youngstown and go to the police department's part of the website, and I'm getting you the, okay, the 742-8946. 8946 will get you the traffic office clerk, and then she can make a note of it and pass it on.
Okay, and the email for the public to write to?
Go to the City of Youngstown website and then just navigate to the police department.
Okay. There's no dedicated email address then for traffic complaints?
No.
Okay. Basha?
Thank you through the chair. I guess kind of a comment and a request. I first want to say that I do believe that that traveling sign does help slow down, the speeding. Another thing, when we had the like the cameras on 680 and how speeding was slowed down and decreased a lot, it changed kind of the behavior and the culture of how people were driving, because they knew and anticipated if they speed they're going to get a ticket. Or as an example, I know when I'm driving through Poland Village, I better be going 25 or odds are I'm going to get pulled over. I say all of that to say that I feel if our officers would start pulling people over for speeding, then eventually the behavior of the public would change, because they would know that, hey, if they're going to speed, they're going to get a ticket. I mean, it's not going to stop all speeding, but I do feel that it would, decrease a lot. So I would like to see officers start pulling people over for those type of traffic citations, understanding that we also deal with other issues that would, supersede and take more importance. But I would like the officers to start pulling people over for speeding. That's all. Thank you.
Councilwoman Davis?
It's Dana?
Yes, if I may, I don't know how to interject without video. Attorney Libyan has asked me to track cases through the clerk's office that are processed through the prosecutor's office. And what we discovered in August is that the Highway Patrol has been writing about 90 traffic tickets a week on state routes in the city of Youngstown. They appear mostly to be seatbelt tickets, which means typically somebody was stopped for speeding, advised that they got a warning for that, and then given a seatbelt ticket as part of their education and safe driving program. And we believe it was in response to exactly what Councilwoman Adamczak said, that once the cameras went away, people started getting a little heavier on the accelerator. So I think they noticed that, and they deployed some on our state routes to aid in that.
Okay, Dana, Attorney Lance, I'm sorry, Attorney Lance. So we had 90 from the state. How many from the city?
Well, what I got was there are 480 traffic citations issued last month, and the court administrator made an educated guess that about 90 of those had been from some sort of saturation or by the Highway Patrol or plan where they have been running traffic in the city. 90 a week.
A week, okay, thank you. Chief, do the patrol officers take the laser units out as a part of the patrol? Are they taking them out with them when they're going out on patrol? You know? That used to be a thing that the big guys did back in the dinosaur age when I was still working. They would, Dave Wilson or Big Daddy, one of them would grab the laser unit, take it with them, and use it while they were working, as opposed to just as part of a special detail. Do you know if they're taking them out on patrol?
through the chair, occasionally, it usually, again, is going to be in response to a complaint. And if the officer works a particular area, of course, they want to try and address those issues. So it's occasional, but again, typically where we have a lot of speeding complaints through the afternoon shift, we're a little busier. So it's, as available as far as that type of enforcement goes. In some specific circumstances where we have it occurring during the day, I get the community police out, and it's frequently in a school zone or, again, a residential street that tends to become a thoroughfare to do some enforcement. So it does happen, to answer your question. The frequency just depends on how busy we are.
The speed trailer, how many speed trailers do we have now? Does the department have, Chief?
Through the chair, we have one speed trailer and then one sign that we can mount. I think we may have a second sign as a backup, but we only have one trailer.
Okay.
That was a package deal. We just got a new one within the last couple of years. And the other thing is we won't deploy it during the winter months because of the salt and water conditions.
Okay, salt and water. We're talking. I'm sorry. You don't deploy it because of salt and water. Are you worried about it being damaged from the salt and stuff, or?
Exactly. The salt and water takes a toll on the trailer because the battery and electronics sit kind of low to the ground, and where it has to be placed along the road, the plows go by, they push again the snow up over it, and with the high salt content from the salting and that, it causes problems. So if we're experiencing times of particularly of heavy snowfall through the winter months, we will not deploy it at those times. If we have, again, a dry spell or something that, we can get it out there, fine. But we kind of experienced this with the last unit, so we're trying to avoid that happening with the new one.
Basha?
Thank you through the chair. When you guys are referencing the speed trailer, are you talking about the sign that travels? Is that what you're referencing?
Chief, you want to respond?
Yeah, through the chair, we actually have it's a trailer unit that we have to pull behind one of the cruisers and put in place. It's a larger device. We have one or two signs that we can actually attach to a telephone pole, which is a little smaller in obviously a little smaller in its size and display, and it has a little more limited battery power. So it has to be brought in more frequently to be charged. So there's two different units. The trailer itself is, like I said, a little bit larger.
Yeah. I was just wanting to make sure that's what you were referring to. And I'm sorry, and direct follow up. What is the cost of one of those approximately?
Approximately off the top of my head, and like I said, the last time we bought one, it was a package deal that included, like I said, I think two of the other signs, and it was about $15,000.
Didn't we? Go ahead, Basha.
Oh, I mean, if it's possible, I would like to try to get one of those package deals for each side of town. I mean, I think it's money. Well, I mean, I think it's money well spent. North side, east, west. I think we could all use one. That's all. Thanks.
I'm in agreement with you, Basha, and salt, Chief. Honestly, salt and everything else. I'd rather see the thing rusted out from salt and drowned in water. If slowing people down can save someone's life or save someone from serious injury. We can't worry more about a piece of equipment than public safety. We can replace that. Chief, we can replace that machine.
I understand that, frankly, during the winter months, the speed complaints really reduce just because of the conditions as well.
I have that smooth road you're talking about, as we discussed. I now have 2 miles of straightaway that's slicker than you know what. So I'm expecting the they're gonna be humping it, this winter, Chief, honestly.
Through the chair.
So, Chief, also, what was the price on the sign? I don't think you answered that question. For the sign and not just the speed trailer, what about just the signs?
That'd be correct. It was a package deal. You get the sign along, or we might actually have two signs that you can put on a telephone pole. But it was a package deal, and it was about $15,000. And I'm just, again, I'm guessing at that. Cost could have gone up or down. It's been a couple of years since we bought the new one.
Okay. Chief, if you can have someone make a notation to see if those signs, those very mobile, those limited signs, can be purchased separately, get us a price to see if we can do a follow-up on Councilwoman Adams' suggestion about buying more of those signs, if they're within our budget. If you can get that information.
Will do.
Through the chair.
Yes, Julius, I'm sorry, Councilman Oliver.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I agree with yourself and Councilwoman Adams as far as getting one for every side of town. Secondly, I want to ask the chief. It may seem like a stupid question. I don't know. But aren't the signs designed to be outside in the elements, whether it's wet or snowy or salty? I mean, if not, I think we should be done buying a different sign or
Chief?
a piece of equipment.
Yeah, through the chair, they are designed, again, to be out in weather. It's just, like I said, during the winter months where it has to be close to the road and where the plows are going to be dumping piles of snow on them. We've kind of avoided that for, again, the obvious reasons of the deterioration through the salt water laying on it and that. So, but they are weatherproof. But again, sitting in a snowbank is something we've tried to avoid.
Councilman Oliver?
Okay. Yeah, I get it. I just would venture to believe that we would just have to practice, good maintenance or preventative maintenance and move it around as needed. But I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Julius, I hear you, and I do concur with you on that. On those days when we don't have a ton of snow, in the wintertime, I would expect to see that speed trailer and any other traffic signs out there putting people on notice. We don't want to see our traffic fatalities and injuries increase the way our other crime has. So, Chief, I want to thank you about and say that don't forget Fernley is in need of you. Fernley Avenue, it's nicely paved, and there were 2 accidents on Midlothian within 7 days. So, any other questions about the speed? And to the public, don't forget that phone number for the traffic clerk is 330-742-8946, 330-742-8946, and that's the traffic clerk with your speeding complaints. Or you can email the Youngstown Police Department. The last item on the agenda under unfinished business, I'll go to Councilman Hughes. Jimmy, this is dealing with the less than, I believe it was less than full time that you were discussing. Councilman Hughes.
Yes, one question for the chief. Is there effort to bring this about in addition to what we already have?
Through the chair, I've researched this a little bit with some of our neighboring departments. Most of them do not employ part-timers. Some of the very small departments do. In talking to them, they put the part-timers through the same training basically that they do with their full-time officers. Yeah, as I said in previous meetings, our FTO program is 4 months. Employing somebody or finding somebody who wants to work part-time, which would indicate they probably had other employment, to put in 4 months in the FTO program, as well as the other, again, indoctrinations and training that we do. I think that's potentially a stumbling block, but the issue right now is kind of moot anyway, since we are nowhere close to our minimum staffing required for the part-timers. The other thing that I looked into was the reserve or auxiliary officers.
Yes.
And what I found is that nobody has a program that functions as the Sheriff's Department currently has. What they have done is they do have small reserve or auxiliary components, but it amounts to, in Boardman and Austintown's case, less than 5 officers. And those officers are actually retirees that they have given those commissions to primarily continue to work their secondary employment situations, and do help out occasionally with events. But that's pretty much it. Some of the outlying areas have actually discontinued those programs because they cannot find people that are willing to do it without compensation.
Jimmy?
No, I mean, I just want to get his opinion of what was going on and what, if any, we were proceeding in what direction. That's all I have.
So Chief, you said Austintown has a limited reserve. Is it reserve or auxiliary? And is reserve and auxiliary the same?
It's kind of a term that's used interchangeably. So I, kind of said reserve and or auxiliary. Boardman and Austintown both maintain them. And like I said, they're staffed. And I think one of them only has 3 individuals involved. And it's retirees that have maintained a commission primarily for those secondary or private sector employment practices. They do help out occasionally with events, but that's relatively limited.
Chief, what kind of events do those retirees, commissioned retirees, do out there? Do you know?
The one thing that was mentioned for both jurisdictions was they have annual parades. Austintown has a pretty significant 4th of July celebration. Boardman, of course, hosts the St. Patrick's Day event. So those were 2 of the things that they threw out there. The other time that those officers put in that's required is typically they'll ride second person in a patrol car, or again, if some other community event comes up that they're available for, they may work it.
They're riding second in a patrol car with a
with a regular
full-time
officer. Yeah.
Okay. And these are recent retirees, I would imagine.
That's correct.
Okay. But do we have any kind of, either to you or to our, to you, Chief, we're not prohibited from using reserves or auxiliaries? That's not a part of the contract, correct?
We don't have anything in the policy or procedures manual. We don't have anything that I believe addresses it in the contract off the top of my head. It's really been a non-issue since they discontinued it back. I believe it was in the early 90s. They tried to resurrect the auxiliary police and it just never got off the ground.
You are the chief of police and I can't direct you, but I can give you my opinion. I think it's foolish that we don't utilize our retirees, and I'm not talking about myself because I'm now way too old. But I think we should be using our retirees for parades, events with our young people. Some of these are retirees, the ones who retire tomorrow, could certainly go speaking at a block watch and a neighborhood association. I think we should take advantage of it. If it can help us with our community relations, I think we should be putting them to use. I don't see why we would be pulling a full-time officer off the road or paying someone to go direct traffic or go pass out hamburgers at a National Nights Out. That's just my opinion. I think we should be looking at that. Cleveland still has it. I know Cleveland, Cincinnati, and all those larger cities still have their auxiliaries. And the county still has theirs. I think as we go forward with our financial situation, we may have to start seriously looking at that down the road. I just don't see us letting those kind of resources just go by the board. You know, I believe we had one guy, Chief, I'm not gonna put him on the spot or you on the spot, but we have one who retired about a month or so ago, and he's already employed at a neighboring police department as a full-time officer. He just retired from Youngstown. So Chief, please, think about that one. I know I'm not letting this one go. I want to see this down the road. Jimmy, if you or Basha or Julius don't have any other questions on the topic of less than full time. And I apologize, but
To the chair,
Jimmy,
I agree with you that we should pursue this. This matter is necessary. We talk about a lot of money that's involved in full-time, part-time. Regardless of how we determine the need and what others are doing, it's going to come a time that these higher numbers of full-time employees are going to be unreachable for us to pay, the city being us. We just need to keep on it, and we just need to work with the powers to be to accept it, because it's not about training. It's not about anything else. It's just about us not using it. And for the city, you can't, there's no training that somebody just went to a full-time employee retires. He went to the same training that we're going to train. He's already had to train, basically. So put that aside. Yeah, maybe we can't get enough, but the way I look at even we got upcoming where we're going to be looking at so many officers going to be retired. And that may be within the next 10 years, but that's going to be a short period of time. We still need to look at it. It's the only thing that's going to make us, or make or break us, is to pay the police less, and no one wants to work for less. That's just my opinion.
thank you. I just can't abide the idea of paying our officers less money. I think the current salaries are, in my opinion, that it's just not enough. But I know that we, at our present staffing levels, that we don't have the finances to pay them more, and we have to bring the money somehow to, I think, give these officers, our new officers, our younger officers, the appropriate wages. And I want to see that. I want to see us make it happen for them. They do the job. For those who are doing the job and doing it correctly, I think they deserve the pay. If it means using more auxiliaries, reserves, part-time to get towards that goal, to put more money in the officers' pockets without breaking the city's back, I'm for it. I just want to make it happen for these new officers. That's my take on it. I don't have anything else on the agenda. And the last thing I have is our next schedule, send a date for our next scheduled meeting. Anything under miscellaneous? No miscellaneous, I assume. Do we have a date for the next safety meeting? Jennifer?
Through the chair, this is Valencia.
Oh, V, I'm sorry, V, I apologize.
No, that's okay. No, the next safety meeting falls on Thanksgiving, so it's to be determined. You guys have to figure out an alternate date. The fourth Thursday of November will be Thanksgiving.
October.
Oh, October date. October date is, I'm sorry, 22nd. October 22nd.
October. Okay, V.
Well, that's right. October 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so our
I'm
next,
sorry, through the chair, and you also need a motion on the new business before you close your meeting.
oh, yes. Do we want to retain this piece here, the appropriate thing, or or take it forward on ordinance 20-235. A motion to either take it or keep it here at the committee. I'll entertain a motion on that.
To the chair, I
Jimmy?
move that we keep it to the committee, since we were told that there was no hurry for it and no hiring would be done to sometime in 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion was made and properly second to retain 20-235 with the safety committee. I think that's the only thing that required further action, one more action. And we've had the law department here and asked them to, we've given them direction on additional legislation regarding the take-home cars. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
To the chair,
Jimmy?
my vote on that motion that we just had is okay, you know? Do we take a vote?
Well, you made the motion, Bosch is second. We want to take a vote? We'll take a vote.
I want to take a vote. Yes.
Excuse me, through the chair, you cannot have two motions on the floor. What is it, a motion to keep it in the committee till the next time? Or
I
are you
think the
gonna
motion
actually
that-
make a motion to have a vote? Those are two separate things.
Jimmy made a motion that was seconded to keep it in the committee. That was the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, and then it was
Okay.
seconded by Councilperson Adams, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
So
so that's
therefore
done.
it stays in committee.
Yes,
Okay.
unless you
Motion-
want to rescind that motion and actually vote on something.
I have no idea.
Okay. Look, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned. The time is 3:53 p.m. Thank you, folks, for joining in to the safety committee meeting. See you next month.